Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, the 12th of May, 2019, the 7th of ER 5779. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. You can always get in touch with me, Josh, at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it is Joshua Hasten, or my new page, Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Instagram now, trying that platform out as well. Hope everyone had a meaningful Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day this past week, and hope you had a joyous Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. I certainly did. I always enjoy going out into the field, as they say, into the Shetach, exploring the land of Israel and its beauty, hiking, and, of course, eating barbecue, which is always nice. Always great to have steak celebrating the 71st birth of the modern state of Israel. We're going to get to some news here and let you know what's going on in Israel and the Middle East. Minister Yuval Steinitz, Israel's energy minister, warned this morning here on Sunday morning that Iran may attack Israel if the U.S. standoff continues with Tehran. The Jerusalem Post reports that Minister Steinitz told Ynet that if things escalate between Iran and the U.S., that perhaps he's not ruling out that Iran will activate either Hezbollah or Islamic Jihad cells, whether in Lebanon or in Gaza, and perhaps fire missiles at the state of Israel as a result of the current escalation in tensions between President Trump and the Iranian mullahs. Of course, the U.S. increasing economic and military pressure on Iran. President Trump on Thursday urging Iran to give up their nuclear program, not ruling out an armed confrontation. So we'll have to monitor, and I'm sure our leaders are monitoring the situation very carefully to see what happens vis-a-vis the U.S. and Iran and how that could affect Israel. I read somewhere over the weekend that the U.S. was sending another major carrier to the Gulf region as a result of this conflict, and we'll have to see how this plays out between the President of the United States and the Iranians. Here on this front locally, of course, last week we had hundreds, almost 700 missiles fired into Israel coming out of Gaza, and we're supposed to have a ceasefire, right? Well, that is not the case. Every time we declare a ceasefire, the situation maintains turbulent at the border with Gaza. The J-Post also reports over the weekend that one Arab was killed, dozens injured, thousands of Gazans. I wouldn't call it a demonstration. I would call it an attempted infiltration. I would call it a violent riot gathered on the border fence with Israel. 6,000 Arabs gathering in 5 spots along the border fence, throwing explosives and rocks and grenades and whatnot at Israeli forces there, trying to protect our communities, Israeli communities, which are just, some of them are just several hundred yards or meters away from the Gaza border. And, of course, while this so-called ceasefire continues, which is a complete joke, more of the incendiary balloons being launched into Israel, a fire starting at Nahal Oz in southern Israel, and Hamas releasing a social media video of the balloons being launched, the fire contained and put out by the Israeli firefighters. So in other words, perhaps they're not sending over rockets, but once again, as is the case in every ceasefire that we've had with them, I think this is the 55,000th ceasefire over the last year. It's all a joke. They continue to launch these balloons and try to murder Israeli children who may mistake a balloon for a something you play with when these have explosive devices on them. One of the most heart-wrenching videos I saw over the Yom HaZikaron holiday, Memorial Day, I mean, in addition to all of the unbelievable stories and videos that I watched about the lives of those who gave their lives defending the state of Israel, who fell in battle or were killed in terror attacks. If you've seen this, it's a shocking video. A little kid, must be 2 or 3 years old, from a community in the South, playing with his toy car and hearing the siren. We have 2 sirens here for Memorial Day, where people stand at attention. The siren in the evening is 1 minute, and then during the day is 2 minutes, in memory of all those who gave their lives for the defense of the state of Israel. So here's a 2-year-old kid in the South, not realizing it was that siren, thinking it was an incoming missile siren, throwing down his toy car and running for the shelter. It's just a heartbreaking video. Situation down there is not normal, and just because there aren't rockets being launched every day, there's still terror being carried out, spilling over into Israel. Nevertheless, somehow, for some reason, and I could probably do a copy-paste on these comments. I've said it many times before. I don't get it. I don't understand it. The Jewish press reports, jewishpress.com, says the IDF opened the crossings to Gaza this morning, Sunday morning, having reopened the fishing areas off the Gaza Strip shore as well, as part of Israel's efforts to prevent a humanitarian deterioration in Gaza. A statement from Kogat, the coordinator of government activities in the territory, said that the Erez and the Kerem Shalom crossings would open and operate as usual, according to the routine operating hours. In other words, tons and tons of materials flowing into Gaza. We're just sending over materials to our enemies, Hamas. And let's not forget, not only has Hamas fired thousands and all the other terror groups fired thousands of rockets, people I think sometimes forget that this is the same terror organization that launched so many suicide bombing attacks in the 90s and the 2000s here, killing over, along with Fatah, of course, murdering over 1,500 Israelis. So, again, why are we helping them out? Why do we have anything to do with them? Ultimately, I believe we should take over Gaza, and that's the irony. There was more opportunities for peace when we were in Gaza, when Gaza was under Israeli control. So ultimately, we're going to have to go in and take over Gaza. But at this point, I would not send in troops. I would start by stopping this so-called humanitarian aid or gestures to Gaza when Hamas is, number one, taking over many of the materials and using them for their own purposes, whether it's building more tunnels or rockets or whatnot. And secondly, it just enables and prolongs the situation, kicks the can down the road by allowing them to hang on there. As I've said maybe a million times, more or less, turn off the water to Gaza, turn off the electricity, stop enabling Hamas, let the people turn on their leaders there. It has worked in other conflicts before. Let's support those Gazans who didn't vote for Hamas. Let's support those Gazans who maybe perhaps did and maybe realized the error of their ways and had enough of Hamas. Those are the ones who should receive our support, but it just enables and prolongs their suffering under Hamas by supporting them time and time again and sending more materials into them. I know it would harm them in the short term, but in the long term, if we could get rid of these terror groups in Gaza, everyone would benefit. So that's my take on what we should and should not be doing. I don't see this as a humanitarian aid or a necessary gesture. I just see this as prolonging the current reality, and that includes the riots on the borders each and every Friday. Here, very interesting here, investigative report by TPS, published also by the Jewish press, in regard to the situation in Gaza. Mass emigration from Gaza threatens future of the Palestinian Authority. And I think this is a positive development for Israel. Gaza's younger and educated population is leaving the Strip in search of a better future in Europe, while actually risking their lives in a dangerous journey running through Africa's countries, trying to get to Europe. They call it the voyage of death, trying to escape Gaza. And the article here details how people are able to escape this risky through this risky venture, leaving Gaza. But the fact of the matter is, the bottom line is, this story, this report, really puts an emphasis on the fact that some of the people there, many people there, have had enough of Hamas rule. They are fleeing. These are students who see no future under Hamas. Entire families, young women, also set out for Europe. Official Palestinian Authority data shows that the numbers of immigrants are growing. The numbers of those leaving Gaza outnumbers those returning to it. So the Arab population in Gaza is shrinking. Some 36,000 Gazans have left the Strip in recent months. Only 17,000 have returned. The majority have left for Europe. So here we have a situation, I guess you could say, similar to Syria or other countries where people are fleeing conflicts and wars. And also very interesting that those leaving Gaza, they're not blaming Israel for the situation, their poor situations. They're blaming the Palestinian Authority and Hamas because that's where the blame lies. It is simple. It is their own fault, their own doing. Okay? And these people realize it and understand it. The Arabic media criticizing the PA for its lack of ability to stem the flow of immigrants, noting that the phenomenon is dangerous because immigrants will obtain citizenship at their countries of destination, decreasing from the number of so-called, what they call Palestinian refugees, and eligible for what they call the right of return. So there will be less, and this will take some time, but there'll be less Arabs in Gaza. Therefore, less will be able to say we have, which they don't have in reality, will claim that they have this so-called right of return after what they call the Nakba of the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, a war in which Israel, a defensive war of survival, while all of the 5 Arab armies and the locals attacked Israel, and they call it a catastrophe. You lose a war, and yeah, perhaps for you it is a catastrophe. Maybe you shouldn't have started that war to begin with, but the bottom line is less Arabs in Gaza, in my opinion, is a positive sign for Israel. And there are those out there who believe that there should be an incentive package for Arabs also in Judea and Samaria who've had enough of this area and want to emigrate to other countries. There should be a opposite or reverse, nefesh b'nefesh, if you will. I don't want to compare the two. For Arabs who don't want to live under the PA, who would rather live under other countries, whether somewhere in the Arab world or in Europe. Certainly not going to get a better condition of life in the Arab world, but perhaps had enough of the corruption and whatever life is like under Hamas or the PA, wanting to get out of this area. Let's finish this segment of the show with some good and positive news here. 2 Israeli judokas, if that's how it's pronounced, judo experts, champions, took home gold and silver medals at the Baku Grand Slam in Azerbaijan yesterday, putting the athletes one step closer to the 2020 Summer Olympics. Middleweight champion Sagi Muki defeated his Bulgarian opponent in the under 81 kilogram weight class to win the final in Azerbaijan. Fellow Israeli judoka Tohar Butbol won the silver medal in the under 71 kilogram category. The gold medal winner Muki told Sports One News, he said, "I get so much of my motivation from knowing that I represent Israel and that my entire people are behind me in good times and not so good times," he said. Israel winning medals in athletics around the world, more judo champions. Israel's great, by the way, in judo. If you're not aware, if you've seen Israel, Israel's a top country in the field of the sport of judo in international competitions. They have been in the Olympics, men, women. Israel's a top, definitely one of the top judo nations, so we wish them well, these athletes, in their future endeavors, and hopefully they will be headed towards the Olympics in 2020. Much more to talk about in the next half of the show. Stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten, recording here on Sunday for my Monday show on the 12th of May, 2019. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. We are going to take a short break. Be right back with first shout out, of course, to Benjamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, Tabitha Epstein, who does all the work behind the scenes. Without them, folks, we could not have these podcasts here on the Land of Israel Network. Take a short break. We'll be right back.
We have a great program this Shavuot, the Shavuot Experience of a Lifetime in Jerusalem, close to the Old City at the Mount Zion Hotel. And it's going to be something that you're going to remember forever that you took part in.
Shavuot of a Lifetime, Thursday through Monday, June 6th through 10th, 2019, featuring show hosts Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel, Yishai and Malka Fleischer, Gil Hoffman, Eve Harrow, and more. For more information, visit thelandofisrael.travel for the Shavuot of a Lifetime. That's thelandofisrael.travel.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, May the 12th, 2019, the 7th of the hour, 5779. And it is a true honor to have on the show right now Nadia Matar. If you're not aware at this point, Nadia Matar, along with Yehudit Katzover, are the recipients of this year, two of the recipients of this year's Moskowitz Prize for Zionism. I would say they're like the Nobel Prize, but I don't want to insult the Moskowitz family and compare it to the Nobel Prize, because this is even bigger, in my opinion, for their work over the years, both Yehudit and Nadia, on behalf of the Jewish people here in the land of Israel on so many different fronts. Currently, Nadia and Yehudit are working on what is called Israel's sovereignty movement, founded by women in green to apply sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, and really all over the land of Israel, because we really have to express our sovereignty. Without that, where are we? So it's a truly an honor here in Jerusalem to speak to the one and only Nadia Matar. Nadia, welcome back to Israel Uncensored here on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
Thank you. Shalom to you, Josh, and shalom to your listeners.
First, if you can, and if you can hear, if you're hearing some of the noise in the background, there's a lot of people, but because Jerusalem is a growing and thriving and beautiful city, so we were hearing some background noise, perhaps. But Nadia, tell us your thoughts on receiving such a prestigious honor coming up. The event is on June 4th in Jerusalem. Yes,
at the Binyanei Hauma on June 4th on Tuesday night.
And what's it like being a recipient when you found out the news? What was your reaction?
Well, as Yehudit Katzover and myself, you took the words from our mouth. We said immediately that it's a bigger honor than the Nobel Prize. You have to understand, everybody who knows the Moskowitz family, Dr. Irving of blessed memory and Cherna, may she have a long life, are people who their entire action and everything they do is the love of Eretz Israel, but not only the love, but the developing of Eretz Israel. Dr. Irving Moskowitz was like a prophet, as Yehudit said already on a few shows in Hebrew, a prophet who said we have to resettle Jews in East Jerusalem. Who would have thought of it at the time when he spoke about it? And he didn't only dream about it, but very often prophets only talk, but he also acted upon his beliefs. And thanks to him and his wife and the entire Moskowitz family, there are now so many Jews in East Jerusalem. And from there, they went on to other places in Judea and Samaria, understanding. So, and then they basically, their prize was in order to instill not only love but also motivation to others to say, here, we're giving prizes to those who act for Eretz Israel. So we see this prize not for Yehudit and I personally, but for all the workers, the people, the partners we are working with together for over 25 years, since Women in Green was founded in 1993, but mainly in 2011 when Yehudit thought of that it wasn't enough to just develop the land of Israel and to call for the development of the land of Israel, but the left has a program. Where is the program of the national right? What is our vision? What is our dream? It's not enough to say we want Jews to live in the land of Israel. We have to be sovereign over the land. And that is something that was lacking. For those who don't know, or for those who forgot, or for the young people who are listening, when we won the war in 1967, the government of Israel didn't really know what to do, and they decided to wait and to create some kind of body called the civil administration that will administer the areas, but they didn't do what they should have done as as a party that won the war. When you win a war, especially when you return to your God-given biblical homeland, they should have basically included all the areas that they won in the war as part of the land of Israel. From a legal point of view, i.e. they should have applied sovereignty. And because there were so many question marks and they didn't know exactly, there was no plan, they didn't. They basically created a body called the Civil Administration that would administer those areas. But parallel to the stuttering of the government at the time, there were some people like Rabbi Levinger, like Rabbi Hanan Porat, and like many others, like the Katzover family, who said, what do you mean, what should we do? We should go and resettle our God-given biblical heartland. Shechem, Hebron, Gush Etzion, Shiloh, Bet El, this is the heart. We are here because of 2,000 years of yearning for those areas, not for the disco in Eilat or Tel Aviv. With all our respect to Tel Aviv, the Israel and Zionism is Shiloh, Bet El, Hebron, Jerusalem, etc. And that is when they returned and started creating settlements and brought, thanks to their activities, and Yehudit is one of the 13 women who was in Beit Hadassah for a full year, thanks to whom Hebron was reopened to Jews under the leadership of Rabbi Levinger. And 500,000 Jews live in Judea and Samaria, but parallel to the incredible activities by pioneers and by people who build and by people, amazing people like the Moskowitz family who helped fund all those incredible pioneering enterprises, the government stayed for 52 years with the same stuttering about what is the status of Judea and Samaria. And no surprise then that the world started saying, hey, if you don't include it in your country as part of the land, as part of your state, maybe you are occupiers. Maybe really there is a claim to the Arabs that it's not really yours. And then Peace Now started saying we should give it away. We have to once and for all. And that's in 2011. Yehudit said, people wrote about it, but nobody made it into a campaign. And Yehudit said, let's make a campaign, let's make a movement, saying that the national right has a plan, the application of Israeli sovereignty. That's when we started. And thank God, from something that also looked like a fringe idea to raise the flag of sovereignty, I think that not only us, but thanks to a lot of things that we did, whether it's conferences, our journal distributed in 200,000 copies, and other things. And in addition, of course, to what other people have done, whether it's the politicians, whether it's Nathan Engelsman and Shevach Stern in the Likud, who brought upon the incredible historic vote in the Likud, meaning Yehudit spoke to them and they said, you're right, with such a great idea, and they convinced 900 people in Likud to call for the Central Committee meeting, and on January 31st, 2017, the Likud voted for the application of Israeli sovereignty over the Jewish settlement in enterprise in Judea and Samaria. To make a long story short, the Moskowitz Prize is basically something amazing. We are very moved by it, and we wish Cherna Moskowitz a long life. And she is our role model of somebody who doesn't only talk, but does, and we thank her.
So that's Tuesday night, June the 4th in Jerusalem at the International Convention Center. There are tickets available, so go online, the Moskowitz Prize. You can Google that and you can get yourself tickets. It's a very moving, unbelievable ceremony. I think I've gone almost every single one over the last I think it's been almost a decade now, if not a little bit more. 12 years now. It's an amazing, amazing experience to be there. You mentioned the Likud, so I want to ask the next question. We just had an election here in Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu came out victorious, and we're in the process now of forming a government coalition. And right before the election, he actually mentioned, and I don't have the exact quote, he discussed openly, I believe maybe for the first time in his political career, he mentioned the fact that we need to, in fact, apply sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. And I know that your organization publicly applauded the Prime Minister for making a statement. So are you optimistic then with that Likud referendum, with the fact that Prime Minister said the things that he did, once the government is in fact formed, that this will be a top priority of the next administration in Israel to strive towards sovereignty over these areas?
We certainly were very pleasantly surprised and happy to hear the Prime Minister before the elections. The fact that he spoke about the need for sovereignty and that he wants to do it shows that he understands the feelings in the people, meaning he expressed what the majority of the Jewish people want. So that is an incredible advancement in our opinion. But there is talking and there's promises before the elections, and then there is the implementation. And we are now at the stage where we have to all get organized into making sure that Prime Minister Netanyahu will actually implement what he spoke about before the elections. One of the things that we can already announce is that we will use the Moskowitz Prize to have a sovereignty youth conference. One of the amazing things in our sovereignty movement is that we have a future generation, youth who joined us and told us that they understood that if there will be sovereignty, then there wouldn't have been all those instructions that they were part of Netiv Avot and Migron, etc. And we had a huge conference last year, and I think you even were there, Josh. And unfortunately, also Ari Fult was there, if you remember, and he was so enthusiastic about it. And certainly, we are now going to, with this conference and with other campaigns, make sure that the Prime Minister will stand firm. But we have to also be very careful and make clear that when we talk about sovereignty, with the Trump plan coming soon, we have to make clear that sovereignty will be applauded as long as it will be sovereignty and not together with also giving the Arabs some kind of autonomy or self-rule. We have to be very, very clear-cut about this, because there are some rumors that are talking about receiving sovereignty, Israeli sovereignty over the Jewish communities, and A and B will be under the some kind of mini-Arab Palestinian state. God forbid. That would be a tragedy. That would be something unacceptable, because I think that the latest round of missiles has proven that the moment we give the Arabs any area under their self-rule, the missiles start falling. So our message of the sovereignty movement is that there has to be Israeli rule and sovereignty from the sea to the Jordan, completely, over all of Judea and Samaria. And if that's what the Prime Minister is talking about, then we certainly are very happy about it, and we'll make sure it happens together with all of you listeners and all of our partners.
Reports, as you mentioned, reports over this past weekend indicating that President Trump and the so-called deal of the century might in fact be released after the holiday of Shavuot, which ironically comes just several days after the Moskowitz Prize ceremony and celebration. So we'll have to see what in fact is written in that plan.
I must add something.
Please, go ahead.
We have, what surprises many people is that we are not doing this just for us. This is in the interest of the American people also, that there should be Israeli sovereignty. We're not begging and we're not asking for favors. This is not only our right to this land, it is also the best thing for real peace in the Middle East and for real peace for Jews and Arabs alike. Anybody who calls for the creation of a Palestinian state, it is the most immoral call ever, because we know it's a state where a Palestinian state would be where women have no rights and where they do it would be a jihadist state where, and unlike that, Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria is not only good for the Jews but also for the Arabs. And I'll surprise you and your listeners by saying that we have Arabs who are with us in our sovereignty movement and who have been with us for the past few years, cursing the Oslo agreements, cursing the fact that the PA has been created, and agreeing to live under Israeli sovereignty with residency and not citizenship, understanding that we cannot give citizenship to 1.8 million Arabs at this point before we have at least 2 more million Jews living and making aliyah, please God. And therefore, it is very important that people understand we're not begging and we're not asking. If anybody who cares about real peace in the Middle East, anybody who cares about the lives of Jews and Arabs alike, should be in favor of sovereignty, and anybody who's in favor of a Palestinian state today is somebody who's calling for an immoral state, a state where people will suffer, a state will call for the destruction of Israel and for the miserable lives of Arabs. That's very important to me. Also, Arabs are for Israeli sovereignty.
And I believe that, and we discussed in the first half of the show a new report that came out by TPS indicating that Arabs in Gaza are emigrating at an enormous rate, and that's a direct result of their despair living under Hamas. And the situation in Gaza is the perfect example of what happens when you turn over areas of land to the Palestinian Authority or to Hamas. The Arabs there are trying to get out of there and think how much better life was for the Arabs living under Israeli control. And the BDS movement and those who are trying to boycott the state of Israel, who are they actually hurting? They're actually hurting the Arabs. And that's why I understand why Arabs would in fact be willing to join the sovereignty movement. Yehudit Katzover is here as well, and if she would like to say a few words in English, we will turn over the mic. If you want to say a few words, Yehudit Katzover as well. Nadia has one other point, and then Yehudit can, if she wants to say something in Hebrew, in English. No, she's going to pass.
We're working already on the Sovereignty Youth Conference, which we're planning right now. We met here in Jerusalem because we're meeting a few more friends for two things. First of all, to plan the Sovereignty Youth Conference, which will give the exact date by the end of the day today. And secondly, also to continue and plan the Tama. I don't know if you know, but the Tama is basically a national outline plan that we're working on. A year and a half ago, somebody told us, you talk about sovereignty and I talk about the Messiah. It cannot be implemented. And we said we should really show that it can, and we worked with a architect about this, and we really actually are planning an outline plan of how it will look, and that's what we're meeting for today also. What I wanted to add is one more sentence, is that not only are Arabs joining us on the sovereignty movement, we have Christian Zionists who also joined us. We have this incredible person called Anthony Abma, who from Canada, but he's in contact with Americans too, and he created this organization called Christian Zionists Support Israeli Sovereignty, and he basically told us, he says, very often you have Christian Zionists who say that they're for Israel, but it's not enough to be for Israel by waving an Israeli flag at home. To be in favor of Israel, it is to be for Israeli sovereignty. And you will hear about him more, and I suggest you interview him and hear more about what they're doing, because they're amazing also. So there's so many people in favor of Israeli sovereignty. That is the right and correct thing to do.
Nadia Matar, Yehudit Katzover, Israel Sovereignty Movement, founded by Women in Green, and now recipients of the 2019 Moskowitz Prize for Zionism. And it's always an honor to have you on the show, always wonderful and inspiring to hear the amazing things you're doing. Come to Oz V'Gaon in Gush Etzion and see Zionism in action, see these pioneers building the land of Israel, see it for yourself. And I think Nadia has one more thing to say before we go off air.
I want the listeners to say that how lucky we are to have Josh Hasten, who is, it's very important, because Josh is one of our people here in Gush Etzion, and he is not only doing radio shows, he's everywhere there is action for Zionism. Josh is one of our partners, and our prize is thanks to all our many, many partners who work with us, and Josh, you are one of them. You're amazing, and we thank you.
Too kind. Ben Bresky, you might have to edit that part out. I'm overwhelmed here for that coming from Nadia Matar and Yehudit Katzover here. So that's going to do it for today. Go online, get your tickets to the Moskowitz Prize for Zionism in Jerusalem on Tuesday night, June the 4th or the 5th? Tuesday night. June the 4th. I got to get that right. I got to get that in my calendar. And that's going to do it for today's show. You are listening to Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Recording my Monday show here on Sunday, May the 12th, 2019, the 7th of the year, 5779. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com on Facebook. Joshua Hasten, or my new page, Josh Hasten, Israel Advocacy and Journalism, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and now on Instagram. I'm still learning Instagram, exploring how to utilize Instagram for getting out the word on everything going on here in the land of Israel. So again, shout out to Ben Bresky, Tabitha Epstein, everyone else, and all of my fellow co-hosts at the Land of Israel. If you missed any part of the show, you can go back and listen on SoundCloud, iTunes, Facebook, or anywhere else you can find the Land of Israel Network. Thanks so much for joining us between now and when we speak again. Please God, next week, everyone out there in the wonderful world of ours, be safe. Shalom from Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish people.
It's not just a refinement of the Jews, and it's not just the strength of the Israelis now, but there is a whole world of the nations that are a part of this process, and they are being refined just as well, and they are going against the grain. With the rise of anti-Semitism, it's going to get harder and harder to stand with
And there's
Israel.
no running away from it either. I mean, there's nothing greater than living as a Jew, especially in our world today, where we see the ingathering of the exiles from all around the world. They're coming back to the land of Israel. We have our own state. The technology, the innovation, the light that's coming out of the Jewish people in Israel is unparalleled. And that's part of what we're trying to broadcast here on the Land of Israel Network and share that message.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.